We received a letter from the White House just yesterday that they will not let you answer any questions beyond what you told the special counsel and was publicly released. The White House's instruction to you is based on a bogus claim of executive privilege, even though you did not work a single day for the administration, let alone in the executive branch. My colleagues are going to get into the specific events in detail, but I'm especially troubled by the President's attempt to obstruct Congress's investigation and prevent the American people from learning the truth about what he's done, and I want to ask you questions relevant to that issue. Mr. Lewindowsky, is it correct that as reported in the Mueller report on June 19, 2017, you met alone in the Oval Office with the President? I said,
is there a book and page number you can reference me to, please? I don't have a copy of the report in front of me.
Volume 2, page 90. But I simply ask you, is it correct that as reported in the Mueller report on June 19, 2017, you met alone in the Oval Office with the President?
Could you read the exact language of the report, sir? I don't have it available to me.
I don't think I need to do that, and I have limited time. Did you meet alone with the President on that date?
Congressman, I'd like you to refresh my memory by providing a copy of the report so I can follow along.
You don't have a copy with you?
I don't have a copy of the report, Congressman.
Clock will
Mr. Chairman, I request that the clock be stopped while this charade is sorted out.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm sorry, Congressman, what page was it?
The clock should have been stopped and should remain stopped. Page 90, volume 2.
Okay, and which paragraph, sir?
I don't have it in front of me.
I'd like a reference, sir, so I can follow along on what you're asking.
Do you not have an independent recollection of whether you met with the President on that date?
Congressman, I'm just trying to find in the Mueller report where it states that.
Well, you have it in front of you. I gave you the page number.
Okay, where on page 90 is it, sir?
Mr. Chairman, you got to start the clock.
No, I don't have to start the clock when he's filibustering. Bottom of page 90.
Well, filibustering is a different issue. That's across the hall in the Senate. This is actual questions being done now.
Mr. Chairman, point of parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Chairman.
That's not
The gentleman will state his point of parliamentary inquiry.
Mr. Chairman, is it appropriate for a witness to refuse to answer a question and instead demand that we reference and point him to the... I'd ask that that Mueller report be closed and the witness be directed to answer the question.
No, well, the answer is not appropriate, but it's on the bottom 2 lines of that page.
Now it can start. The clock can start now. There's a question.
Point of order. When will the clock start, Mr. Chairman?
Once the question's asked, Mr. Chairman, the clock should start.
Right under overview, 2nd line.
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Chairman.
The gentleman, the witness.
Point of order.
The witness has the time and will
Point of
answer
order is
the question. The witness
point of order
will answer
overrides
the question.
that. A point of order overrides that, Mr. Chairman, and you know that.
The gentleman will state his point of order.
Point of order is once the question has been asked in reference properly to the witness to answer the question, the clock should start. It cannot be held while you and your counsel go over notes.
The gentleman is correct. The clock will start. And the witness will answer the question without further delay.
Yes, I see that in the report.
Thank you. During that meeting, did you tell the special counsel that the President, quote, asked you to deliver a message to Sessions, who was then the Attorney General of the United States? Page 91. I asked you a question, sir.
I'm looking for that reference on page 91, Congressman.
Do you not have an independent recollection?
No, I'm looking... Mr. Congressman, I'm trying to adhere to the White House's request. I answer questions that are provided in the Mueller report only, so I'm trying to reference that report directly about your question, Congressman.
Were you a White House employee at that time?
No, Congressman.
And if, did you ever, okay. You did not hold any position in the government whatsoever, did you?
Correct.
Now, sitting behind you are counsel for the White House, correct?
That's my understanding.
You understand those lawyers actually work for the President at the White House?
I believe that's accurate.
Nevertheless, the President's lawyers have told you not to answer any question by this committee other than what has already been disclosed in the special counsel's report. Is that correct?
Congressman, I'd have to read from the letter that the White House provided the committee if that would help clarify. Would you like me to do that, Congressman?
No, I'd like you to answer the question. Have you been directed?
Congressman, I've never spoken to any members of the White House counsel's office other than saying hello about 15 seconds ago.
But you were directed by letter.
Congressman, I was provided a letter that I believe this committee was assigned. It says, as explained below, Mr. Lewandowski's conversation with the President and with senior advisors to the President are protected from disclosure by long-settled principles protecting executive branch confidentiality interests, and as a result, the White House is directing Mr. Lewandowski not to provide information about such communications beyond the information provided in the portions of the report.
We'll take that as a yes. And the basis for their direction is a claim of executive privilege. Is that correct?
I can read it again, Congressman.
The answer is you're not answering the question. We've already established that you were never employed by the White House or the executive branch. That is correct.
I have never been employed by the executive branch.
Sir, did you ask the White House counsels to be here?
Congressman, as I just reiterated, I've never spoken to anyone in the White House counsel's
The
office.
answer is no. Was it your idea for you not to answer questions based on a claim of executive privilege?
I can reiterate, I didn't ask. I've never had a conversation with someone from the White House counsel's office regarding this matter.
So it was your idea not to answer?
I have never had a conversation with someone from the White House counsel's
Was it
office
your
regarding this
idea
matter.
not to answer these questions on the basis of executive privilege? Yes or no?
Congressman, I can only go by the letter that was provided. It was not my idea to provide this letter.
Not your idea. Did you ever suggest to the President or anyone else that you thought your communications with him were official White House communications?
Congressman, the White House has directed I not disclose the substance of any discussions with the President or his advisors to protect executive branch confidentiality. And I recognize this is not my privilege, but I am respecting the White House's decision.
Let me ask you some questions about your relationship with the President after he assumed office. How many times has the President asked you to meet him in the White House?
The White House has directed not disclose the substance of any discussions.
How many times did you meet with the President alone in the White House in 2017?
I don't know the answer to that.
How many times did he direct you to deliver a message to a member of his cabinet?
The White House has directed not disclose the substance of any discussions with the President.
Did he ever discuss with you any concerns that he may have committed a criminal offense?
The White House has directed not disclose the substance of any discussions with the President or his advisors to protect executive branch confidentiality.
All right,
I recognize this is not my privilege.
Mr. Chairman, I make a point of order. Pursuant to Clause 2J, 2A of Rule 111, that the gentleman is out of order. He has exceeded the time limit under the 5-minute rule.
I will enforce the time limit under the 5-minute rule.
I challenge the ruling. I challenge the ruling of the chair.
The ruling of the chair is challenged. All those in favor of overriding the rule of the chair will say aye. Opposed, no?
No.
No.
Roll call.
Noes have it. Roll call is asked. The clerk will call. Where's the clerk?
We can make this a lot easier, Chair. We can. I mean, this could
Clerk will call the roll.
Should have stopped and got your question.
No, I had one paragraph to go. He's been filming this.
But would you stop during the time? You had some.
Yeah. Mr. Nadler?
The question is, the question is, will the ruling of the chair be overruled? My vote is no.
Mr. Nadler votes no. Ms. Lofgren? Ms. Jackson-Lee? Ms. Jackson-Lee votes no. Mr. Cohen? Mr. Cohen votes no. Mr. Johnson of Georgia? Mr. Johnson of Georgia votes no. Mr. Deutsch? Mr. Deutsch votes no. Ms. Bass? Ms. Bass votes no. Mr. Richmond? Mr. Jeffries?
No.
Mr. Jeffries votes no. Mr. Cicilline? No. Mr. Cicilline votes no. Mr. Swalwell?
No.
Mr. Swalwell votes no. Mr. Liu? Mr. Liu votes no. Mr. Raskin? Mr. Raskin votes no. Ms. Jayapal? Ms. Jayapal votes no. Ms. Demings? Ms. Demings votes no. Mr. Correa? Mr. Correa votes no. Ms. Scanlon? Ms. Scanlon votes no. Ms. Garcia?
No.
Ms. Garcia votes no. Mr. Neguse? Mr. Neguse votes no. Ms. McBath? Mr. Stanton?
No.
Mr. Stanton votes no. Ms. Dean?
No.
Ms. Dean votes no. Ms. Mucarsel-Powell? Ms. Escobar? Mr. Collins? Mr. Collins votes aye. Mr. Sensenbrenner? Mr. Shabbat? Mr. Shabbat votes aye. Mr. Gomert? Mr. Jordan? Mr. Jordan votes yes. Mr. Buck? Mr. Radcliffe? Mr. Radcliffe votes yes. Ms. Roby? Mr. Gates? Mr. Gates votes aye. Mr. Johnson of Louisiana? Mr. Johnson of Louisiana votes aye. Mr. Biggs? Mr. Biggs votes aye. Mr. McClintock? Mr. McClintock votes aye. Ms. Lesko? Ms. Lesko votes aye. Mr. Reschenthaler? Mr. Klein? Mr. Klein votes aye. Mr. Armstrong? Mr. Armstrong votes yes. Mr. Stubbe? Mr. Stubbe votes yes.
Has everyone voted who wishes to vote? Madam Clerk?
Mr. Buck, you are not recorded. Mr. Buck votes yes.
Is anyone else? The clerk will report.
Mr. Chairman, there are 13 ayes and 19 noes.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah,
Mr. Chairman,
please.
point of order. Mr. Chairman, since the chairman has refused,
Gentleman is not recognized.
I will be.
The point of order is sustained.
Mr. Chairman,
I am very troubled that the White House counsel sitting behind you are preventing you from answering these very basic questions that go to the heart of the president's conduct we are investigating.
Mr. Chairman, I have a motion.
Mr.
Chairman, I have a motion.
You will wait for your motion until I finish this.
Point of order then.
Not only will
Point of
you
order
not
has got to be recognized.
Not in the middle of...
Yes, it does. The motion is to, since the chairman is not following the House rules, I move to adjourn.
Motion is to adjourn. A motion
Point
to...
of parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Chairman.
Motion to adjourn.
Point of parliamentary.
Will state
If the Republicans on this committee are successful in this motion to adjourn, does that mean there will be no hearing and the American people will not hear from Mr. Lewindowski about his efforts to obstruct justice?
Yes, that's exactly what it means.
That's what I want.
It also could read, they could read the 3 times it's
Motion-
previously already done
I
it.
have a point of parliamentary inquiry.
The motion is not debatable. As many as are in favor of the motion to adjourn...
I have a motion of parliamentary
As
inquiry.
many are in favor...
So Mr. Cicilline gets recognized for his
Motion
inquiry,
is
but I don't
not
get recognized for...
debatable. As many as are in favor of the motion to adjourn say aye. Opposed, no? In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. Roll call is requested. The question is on the motion to adjourn. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Nadler?
No.
Mr. Nadler votes no. Ms. Lofgren? Ms. Jackson Lee? Ms. Jackson Lee